Hey everyone, we are officially live. I was noticing the clock tick down for when the normal start time was, and I went live. I think 4 minutes, I'll correct that. 4 seconds before the normal live time started. You can go early on this platform, but I'm just gonna say that's rare for me to go live seconds before. So usually we either go live 5 or 10 minutes before, or a minute or two after. So that was as close as I can get. I should have left it 4 more seconds, and it would be dead on. But having said that, Corey Poirier here with Blue Talks. If you've been watching us for the last 4 days, you're familiar with me, you're familiar with Blue Talks. Even though this airs on, I think, 12 platforms, most of the platforms were set up through me initially. So you probably know me if you're watching this, but maybe you don't. You could be watching the replay. It could have been shared through somebody else. You could have just got added to my newsletter in the last week, and this could be your first time checking it out. So just as a quick backstory on Blue Talks, I'm just going to take 30 seconds, a minute max, and then I want to bring our guest right into the fold. But Blue Talks itself is, I'm going to call it a newish brand. We started the process of launching about a year and a half ago, but the official launch was September-ish. So we're only like 4 months into this now, and Blue Talks officially is a live video platform in terms of this virtual event. We also have the YouTube channel, and soon we're adding in a whole bunch of new platforms like C-Suite Network, Roku, Apple, Amazon, et cetera, to air the Blue Talks interviews, but also the live talks that we record. So we bring the event to places like TEDx would do, film the speakers, and then air the talks later. So the second part of Blue Talks platform is live speakers, and live stages, which of course COVID has changed a bit, but we're gearing back up again. We also have the book series, so the Blue Talks book series, which I've often joked that is basically, there's I showed volume 1 and Terri just showed volume 2. There you go, perfect. And so so the Blue Talks book series, I've jokingly said it's like if TEDx and Chicken Soup for the Soul got married and had a baby, that would be Blue Talks, the brand, and the book series. So there's the book series, which is a compilation book, and then finally the feature podcast. So those are the different Blue Talks platforms. Blue Talks itself is it stands for the B in Blue. The B in Blue stands for business, and then the L is life, and the U is universe. So Blue stands for business, life, universe, and it's really a brand designed to help people get their message out to the world. And to finish this all off, my goal with Blue Talks, meaning my why within Blue Talks, is to help future and current influencers reach more people with their important message. So that's Blue Talks in a nutshell. That's the brand, everything. And essentially this event is designed, the theme around it is loosely mindset, but it's really just like almost like a conversation over a coffee, getting to know the Blue Talks speaker or author that we're talking to at the time. So that's kind of the introduction. The new Blue Talks books, if you want to check them out, they are on Amazon right now. Maybe I'll plug the website or the link to the Amazon books in the comments here shortly. But Blue Talks right now on Amazon, all 3 of them are on the charts right now as we speak. So thank you everybody for doing that. Book number 3, I just noticed today, is on like 5 charts, still number 1, and the book came out over a week ago now. So like it's still doing quite well. I'm impressed, and I give a lot of that credit to these fabulous Blue Talks community members. So that's a good segue for me to bring on this fabulous Blue Talks author / presenter. And so Terri Murphy, so excited to have you here today. Known you for a while, but what I always like to do at the kickoff of this is get the person themselves to introduce themselves a little bit, and then I'll jump in and we'll get to know you better. But Terri, can you tell us, first of all, welcome, and then secondly, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Corey. Thanks for the nice introduction, and I appreciate being here. So my background has been in sales most of my career. I sold, I managed, and now I hire and train salespeople for the luxury brands Porsche and Audi. And I'm an author, written a few books, and just this past October, I became an international best-selling author. So that's always exciting. And I appreciate your support, Corey. And my book, 10 Minutes to a Happier You, the second edition, everybody, the second edition, because that has Corey's quote in there with his support. And it's just a fun time, and I'm really happy to be here today.
Wow. I'm so super stoked to have you here. And I'm really excited to dive into the book a little bit more. I got a chance to read it myself, but of course, it's always cool to explore it with others who may be discovering it for the first time. And so, I want to also talk about luxury brands for a minute as well. I want to get a little bit, I want to talk about that a little bit because I think whenever we have people that are listening in that are wanting to brand themselves or position themselves, I think there's always stuff we can learn, especially from Porsche is the proper pronunciation, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. From Porsche and is it Audi?
Audi. Yes.
Okay. Because I used to always say Audi and I said Porsche. And so I've tried to correct myself since. So, so Terri, I guess the first question I have is, can you tell us a little bit about the book? Like, what's the 10-minute part? What is that a reflection of the fact that we all want everything quicker now? I'd just like to get your first of all take on what the book is about, the newest book.
Okay, the newest book is basically what it says: 10 minutes to a happier you. And it came about because meditation has changed my life. I've been meditating now for over 13 years. But whenever I would meet people and talk to people, they don't have enough time or they can't quiet their mind. And they're missing a huge part of it if they don't take that time. So that's how this was developed. It actually, the 10-minute exercise was created about 8 years ago when I created my website as a lead magnet. So I had been giving it away for all these years. And then on my Facebook page, I do a little titled Today's Fortune Cookie, a little positive saying that I put out every day. And during COVID, when I was down, I'm like, well, why don't I combine these two and just put it into a book to help people, just take that 10 minutes. If everybody took just 10 minutes, I mean, I put much more time into that, but just 10 minutes a day would make a difference in their vibration. I can't hear you, Corey.
Oh, there you go. I don't know. I guess I hit the mic somehow. So yeah, I was going to say that's such a great point, Terri, the 10-minute side of things, because the fact that it can make a difference. I think that one of the things that is challenging to people is everybody feels, not everybody, shouldn't generalize. A lot of people feel it takes more than 10 minutes. Like a lot of people feel if I can't put aside an hour, there's no point at all. Or I'm going to put aside an hour every day. And then when they don't, they just give up. Mm-hmm. And I love that you're demonstrating to us that it doesn't take an hour, that it can be done in a shorter amount of time. And so what has the feedback been from people that, that are reading it in terms of the fact that they can make these changes a lot quicker than they think?
Yeah, I've been getting a lot of feedback where people say they feel happier, or that it just is helping them focus more on that. It's, we talk about mindset in sales all the time, and it's what you focus on. You can go down there and you can look at all the reasons why people aren't buying a car, or you can look at all the opportunity you have to sell a car. And it's just how we focus our mind.
It's really cool that you say that, because personally, I was in sales for the large part of almost my entire corporate career, but I was in sales in selling office equipment for the better part of 10 years. And one of the things that I noticed when I talk about mindset, and us talking about mindset on this show, one of the things that I noticed is that, and I didn't notice it at the time, but the mindset of some salespeople needs some work. And I say this in the best way possible, because I love sales. That was such an important part of my life. I still am a big fan of sales and salespeople, but I was as a manager, as a trainer, and as a salesperson. I mean, I would have to say, Terri, that if I was in an office of 15 people, at least five it seemed like they were trying to spend every hour sucking the positive energy out of that room. Like I used to call it the adult daycare center at one of the places I work, because people would come back from the road 2 hours into their day, and other people haven't left yet because maybe they're dealing with stuff at the office. And that new person came back basically without saying the words, basically, you'd almost think nobody wants to buy. This thing sucks, and I'm going to quit this job, and just negative energy. So I really do feel it's so powerful for people to realize they get to choose. You get to choose how you approach the day, how you approach that customer, what that customer experience is like, even on your side as the salesperson. So I love that you talk about the fact that you get to choose how you deal with that person and what happens as a result.
Exactly. And people forget we're magnets. So when you're in that negative state, you're just attracting more of it. But when you can control it and focus on the positive, be grateful for what's showing up in your life, it just changes everything. It's a real game changer.
Well, and the other thing I wanted to ask you about with the book itself is to circle back to it is one of the first things that I noticed was the fortune cookie. That you approached having a fortune cookie moment throughout the book, and I guess is there some sort of, I'm going to say, connection to you with fortune cookies, or was it more of a thing that you were just like, this will really help people learn? Or I'm just curious how that came up.
No, so at one point in my career, I was a sales manager in a small BMW center, and there were only 4 salespeople. It was a small center, and everybody had a nickname for everybody. So originally, my name was Woohoo, because I would say woohoo every time we made a sale. And we had this one gentleman that one day walked up and said in a very monotone, "Where's Woohoo?" And that became my nickname. But then one day, one of my coworkers turned to me and said, "Okay, fortune cookie, let's see you put a positive spin on this one," because I always had a positive spin for everything. And when he pinned the nickname fortune cookie on me, it ignited this passion in me that I wanted to start to write. And immediately I would send out emails to all my past coworkers and family and friends with today's fortune cookie, a little positive saying. And that's where that came from.
And of course it's stuck, you know. And I guess I'll ask that too, because again goes back to the idea of even positioning yourself as the person that was sending that out regularly and being consistent with that. Did you get positive responses from sending out those fortune cookies? Like, did people take notice of that?
Yeah. Very much so. And you know, in sales, as a sales manager, I learned to do that. I would put a positive statement every morning. I'd go around and, you know, put a positive statement on everybody's desk. But that was long before the fortune cookies.
Excuse me. I just love it because I'm big anyway on when you can do something that stands out, whether it's in your writing, whether it's in video, what have you, that people can, you know, go and say, this is what makes this thing different. Like the fortune cookie is part of the thing that makes your book different, but also it's something that we can, most of us have had a fortune cookie, and we open it up and we have that experience of whatever that feels like to us. But a lot of people, it's like, I'm going to learn something new today, or I'm going to get this little nugget of insight or wisdom. And you're kind of doing that within the book. So I just love that. I think that really helped the book.
Yeah. And my design of the book was made for just anybody to open it up to any page and get that one positive saying. And I believe the universe will guide you to the right page at the right time, because that's how my life has always worked. I've always had a book where I could just open to any page and read a couple paragraphs and take something with it, so I could take it with me on the day.
Yeah, I mean, that's, again, it's one of those things that if you can have that, I'll say, because some books you have to read the whole book, and some books can stand on their own in sections and pieces. And I'm a big proponent of having those kind of books where no matter where you open to, you can learn something. And I'll tell you what it makes me think of. It immediately draws me to Bob Proctor, who famously has a copy of Think and Grow Rich that he's read for 57. I'll correct the number, 57 years daily. And so when you hold the book, it's like falling to pieces. It's held together with elastic bands. And he has said that he opens the book every day to a certain page, and that's his learning for the day. With Think and Grow Rich. So, you know, and that's what I've done with How to Win Friends and Influence People, which is the first book I ever read, and Think and Grow Rich. I've done that with both of them many times over the years. And, you know, those books give you notes of awesome, regardless of where you open it. It's just oh, go ahead.
No, I said they do. And it's funny how you can read a book at a different time in your life and you get something totally different out of it.
Yeah, even with Think and Grow Rich, I reread it. I've reread it probably 5-6 times, but I reread it recently, and I'm in a different place now even than I was the first time I read it. And, you know, there's times in between there's been little changes, but it was interesting this time I looked at how I looked at it differently now from when the first time I ever read it. And it's like I see some of the things in there that I read back then that don't even mean the same thing to me now. Like,
exactly.
For instance, he talked about things like energy work and pulling stuff from the ether and all that. That meant when I first read it, I didn't know anything about spirituality, woo-woo, and if we want to call it that, new age, nothing. So when I read it the first time, it was like kind of lost on me. And I just made it mean what I thought it meant to me. I kind of was reaching. And then now I'm so much further evolved in that way. And we'll say more woke, as the kids like to say, that now it means something totally different. Like, I totally get it. Like, I didn't even get, back then, The Secret wasn't out or anything. I didn't even understand that he actually was one of the fathers of the law of attraction. Like, I didn't realize Napoleon Hill, he didn't say the words, and that was part of the thing. And he didn't even say attract. Like, he basically talked about you being a magnet to things that you believed, and how if you believed it, it would become a thing. And really, when you look at it now, he was really teaching manifestation and the law of attraction, but nobody knew what that was at the time. So
exactly.
And people are like, whoa, this is a brand new thing. And in fact, Napoleon Hill would be the first to say in his books, because I read one of his books where there's multiple authors, he wasn't anywhere near the first to introduce the law of attraction. There was the success behind what was it called? The Secret Behind the Secret book. I forget what it's called now, but it's Wallace D. Nettles wrote it. The Science
of Getting Rich.
I think that was 1905. And he was talking about manifestation and law of attraction. So
that's a great book.
It is excellent book. I have it just like literally, I can see where it's at from here. And I mean, I'm rereading a lot and starting new books from back in that era, like the 20s, the 1910s. And it's amazing how far ahead of their time they were. Think and Grow Rich, I think the reason that a lot of people, it's easier to explain that one to them is because it's monumental and it was bought and read by more people. Like, I think the number I've heard last was like 100-some million people have bought or read the book. And I mean, so Wallace D. Nettles, is a little more obscure. I mean, I'm sure it was probably 10 million, but I don't think it was 100 million. And so it's easy to go to Think and Grow Rich. But again, back to that original point, I love the fact that you can pull open those books at any point. Same with the Wallace D. Nettles book, and you're going to get something.
Yeah.
It's not like there's books like, have you read The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari?
No, I haven't.
So The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari is by Robin Sharma. And brilliant book. I mean, it sold like, I think, 7 million copies. He has 11 books out. That's probably still his most monumental, and it was his first one that launched his career. That book, you could technically open it at some pages and just start there and get the nuggets out of it. But it's a fictional fable. Or I should say, it's fictional, but it's a parable. And it's loosely based on his life. But because it's a parable, you almost have to read it from the start to the finish.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, you definitely should. I think you would fall in love with that book. It was a game changer for me. But yeah, there are some books that you have to open and start at a certain point. But I love that your book and a lot of books don't have to be done like that.
Yeah.
I'm glad you did that. So I guess if we go a step further, and I do want to come back to the book, but I wanted to ask you, I mentioned about luxury brands, because this is something that's been really intriguing to me. And it's more so in recent years. But how you can, and I think it was Frank Kern, if you're familiar with him, but he's an internet marketing guy. And he talked about how he's bought 3 Rolls Royces, let's say, in his life. And he talked about how the Rolls Royce and BMW are built on the exact same chassis. And he talked about how people will pay, this amount for a Rolls Royce and this amount for a BMW, but yet they're built pretty much the exact same by the same people in the same way, and owned by, I think BMW owns Rolls Royce now, something like that. And he talked about how, I mean, everything is perception at that point. Like, why are you paying this much more? And then you could go to the other extreme and say, why will people pay this much for a BMW? And then other people, would say, well, I'm going to buy a Chev at this price. And, why wouldn't that, why won't that person buy the BMW at that, but why will other people spend twice as much money? So obviously you're dealing with that on a daily basis with Porsche and Audi. So can you, give me your thoughts on what makes people do that? And I guess also, because you get to see people walk in off the street and they're willing to buy a much more pricey luxury vehicle. So what are some of the reasons you think that they do that? And then on the other side, what has the brand done to allow that to happen?
Well, you mentioned that the 2 cars were built on the same chassis. So a lot of automakers share chassis, sometimes engines, but it doesn't make them the same car. Okay. They're different from the whole way up, the same way that you're very different than me, we're all unique, but it's the quality of parts. So for instance, the Audi Q5 and the Porsche Macan were once on the same chassis. I think it has changed in the past year or so, but totally different cars from the inside out. As far as the engine, you sit in it, totally different design. You put the cars side by side, you don't see many similarities other than they're about the same size, you know, but it's the quality of materials that go into a vehicle that really make it luxury the way it's designed from, you know, the ground up. The Audi brand has, you know, the Quattro, which is one of the most advanced all-wheel drive systems. So just because, you know, something has the same shell doesn't mean it has the same interior.
Right. Totally get that. 100%.
Yeah.
And so I guess then what do you see as the thing that they do well? Yeah, I mean, either of those brands or any luxury brand that allows, that will get somebody to spend more money on a car that maybe, and in these cases, obviously a BMW and a Rolls Royce look nothing like each other, even on the outside. But I just mean when you look at, you can look at, I'll give you an example, because and maybe I should ask myself this question, but my car that I have right now is, and I'm bad with model numbers. Like I'm not in the car business, so I'm really bad with them. And I'm not that person that gets under the engine or nothing. That stuff doesn't matter to me. But I believe in if I buy a certain vehicle, it's going to ride different and maybe last me longer. And so I have Mercedes-Benz. I think it's maybe like an A250 or something. But if I look at it out in the parking lot, I can look at a Hyundai that looks almost identical to it on the outside. Now, I know you and I both know on the inside and the way it rides is different, but in the look on the outside, they look so similar. And they both get you point A to point B. And they both, in most cases, cost similar with gas. So my question is, what do you think it is that makes people go, you know what? No, I want that one. And it also makes other people say, oh my gosh, you got that kind of car versus a different one.
It's funny you should say that, because we talk about that a lot in training. You know, why does anybody buy an Audi? Why does anybody buy a Porsche? And it's a different reason for every different person that walks in. You know, somebody's buying it for the status symbol. Somebody's buying it because they want to, you know, have a car that they can take to the track on weekends and race. Other people just want the comfort. So everybody is just a little bit different.
And no, and that makes sense. And I guess the other side, I guess what I would ask then is in terms of when somebody, let's say, buys like for example, a Porsche, and you know the price of a Porsche obviously is quite a bit higher than the price of it. It doesn't matter what car I throw out there, but certain cars like let's say a certain Mazda, specific Mazda. If I just randomly pick a car, is some of the things the idea of prestige and knowing that I have a vehicle not everybody has, and so everybody's not driving around with the same car as me, is some of it that, let's say if they're in sales or business, they feel like when they drive up to a customer's place, especially if they're selling a luxury thing, then somebody's going to look at them a different way. Or if they're a realtor, they're going to look at them as maybe more successful, which can work against you too, because some people would think, well, I must be paying too much for the house if you can afford that. But I mean, is some of it that type of stuff that we hear about?
Yeah. The major buying motives for people are either pride, profit, love, hate, and fear.
Wow.
They're some of the top buying motives. So yeah, people, they pride themselves. Like, you know, I can afford a Porsche. And they want a unique car. Porsche is very unique, where you can go in and build so many different scenarios. You can put very little equipment in it. You can put everything in it. Everything is a la carte. Whereas, you know, Audi has different levels: premium, premium plus, and prestige, that give you different levels. With a Porsche, you can do everything unique. So yeah, some people want to build a car and do it to their specs, so they have a unique car. Everyone's different. Mm-hmm. And some people pride themselves in that. Other people just want their life to profit. You know, the midlife crisis person wants the sports car so they feel young again. So there's so many different reasons and motives why people buy.
And before I move off of this, just to ask your take on it as somebody that's seeing these vehicles every day and working with them, what, in your opinion, is there that big of a difference in the vehicle itself? Like when, I mean, sure, you go for, I'm sure, test drives and different things like that. Do you see it as that big of a difference in the vehicle? Like, do you feel that when you're driving it, it handles that big a difference and everything else?
Yes. Yeah. Each different, a lot of people put, you put an Audi, a BMW, a Mercedes in the same line, a Lexus, and they're all luxury vehicles, but they all have different characteristics and they're all going to, handle differently.
Well, and I'll say it's like also the other thing I've noticed, much like maybe brands like Apple, people are very particular about this is their brand. There's like a whole community built around it, and we didn't realize that. My girlfriend and I, when we got into the Mercedes world, the like there were we bought ours. We're never usually we usually buy a year or two old. That's just the way we work. And so we bought it off somebody, and he was the one that posted it, and then he didn't want to sell it. And then he's trying to tell us all the great things about it. And then he's like, but it was like he knew everything about that car inside and out.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, and he said, "Oh, if you go on this, here's the board, here's the message board you go to for this, here's the message board you go to for that. Like it's a culture. It's not just buying a vehicle."
Yeah, each brand has their own little car clubs. People that just are fans of the brand, and they have club meetings and they do drives across the country. Yeah, there's every brand has their unique following.
So my last question in this area is: do you feel there's anything as business owners, as entrepreneurs, and again, this is just looking from being inside these two luxury brands where you see them do this kind of stuff that builds these followings. Is there anything you think that we can do as business owners to, like, is there a trade or anything you've seen them do that we could actually bring into our business to make us a little bit more sought after or a little bit more luxury or a little bit, is there maybe one or two things you see that they do really well?
That's a good question, Corey. I think it's just what you're doing. You create your own brand. I see you every day out there just putting out there. So it's just getting your name out there and having a quality product. I think that's the bottom line.
And I feel like one of the things, and again, I'm going reaching here to ask this, but I feel like we mentioned the community thing, and each one has their own, following, but also people that are kind of in clubs together and stuff. I feel like these brands get that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they actually encourage the community and they want to make you feel like you're part of something special and unique and a unique experience. Is that safe to say? Like they're building a culture and a community?
That's what I train the salespeople. Every customer's wearing this flashy neon sign. I want to feel special. Right? Yeah.
Absolutely. No, and like I said, I just wanted to go there for a minute because I don't get a chance to talk luxury brands as often on this. Mm-hmm. We had somebody on last time around, not this week's event, but the previous one, Hannah Fitz, and that's what she does. She helps individuals build their own luxury brands. And so that's the last time I remember having a conversation about this. So I just thought I'd get your take. So circling back to your book, and then I want to talk just for a few minutes about the Blue Talk side of things as well. But circling back to your book, what was the catalyst? I was going to ask you, what do people say they get from the book after they read it? But what was the catalyst from your perspective of writing the book? Like, what did you want people to take from it?
I just wanted to make an exercise that people would be able to do. Again, because talking to many people over the years, they want to be happier, but, I don't have time to do this. I don't have time to do that. I can't quiet my mind. Just all the little excuses. So that was the catalyst, coming up with that exercise, 10 minutes to a happier you. Who can't find 10 minutes? And ideally, if you could go longer, the better it is, but just that little bit can help you change focus. And that was the goal.
Well, and to that point, we had David G., who, for those that may not know who he is, he was the meditation guru who started the 21-day challenge that Oprah and Deepak do. Mm-hmm. He was the director of wellness for the Chopra Wellness Center. So he was like Deepak's first, I think, director of the whole wellness center. And so he created the 21-day challenge. And after it hit a certain number of people, then Deepak said, "Oh, that's going really well. Let's bring that over here, and I'll reach out to Oprah and let's make that even bigger." But David created that. And so then he went off on his own, and he's been a meditation guru. He has books with Hay House, and he has a radio show. And one of the things that David said to me in an interview about this, in terms of how much time we really need, is he teaches people, I think it's 27, but it might even be 17, but let's say 27 seconds of meditation, how long that really is. And so what he does, which is brilliant because it's on air, and as you know, 10 seconds on air time seems like 5 hours if there's nothing happening. So he got me to meditate for 27 seconds and everybody listening. And he said, now how long did that feel like? But it's kind of it's a brilliant thing because, again, it's going to seem longer if you have live dead air anyway. But it's amazing how long 27 seconds, like 30 seconds, feels like when you're meditating.
Mhm.
This is a guided meditation where you're not probably thinking of other stuff. So it's not going to even feel like it's even more efficient versus if you're just doing it on your own.
Yeah.
But to that point of what you just said, Terri, I mean, if 27 seconds can seem like a quality meditation, if you're in the hands of the right person, then 10 minutes can feel like forever.
Yeah.
So I think it's important for people to realize 10 minutes is a lot of time. And we say,
Right.
like my TED Talk, my last one is only 5 minutes. And people are like, what do you mean you delivered a talk in 5 minutes? And I asked them to watch it. And over and over, I say, does it feel like 5 minutes? They're like, no, you told a whole story. It doesn't seem like it can only be 5 minutes.
Right. Well, the part of the 10 minutes too is an exercise that you do physically and your breathing exercise. So it's not all just meditation. And the meditation is maybe 5 minutes of the 10. And it's actually, if you count down the minutes, it's really only about 8 minutes. But you mentioned Deepak's book. He wrote a short little book, probably an hour read, the seven spiritual, seven.
I know what you're talking about, 7 spiritual laws of success.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that book changed my life. That's what got me started meditating. I was on a plane to Hawaii. I read it and I got off the plane a different person.
You know what? It's funny. I was looking over to see on my bookshelf if I had it so I could show people the cover. That, likewise to you, that I like. I've read different Deepak's books, but that book for me was, in my opinion at least, that was his monumental book for me. Like that book.
Mine too, yeah.
And it's been a long, long time since I read it, but one of the big ones for me was practicing the law of detachment. And I have to go back to his book over and over to do it again because I do get attached to stuff. And another one was the law of cause and effect was the huge one for me. Like out of his 7 laws, there were like 3 or 4 of them that just I have to go back to it all the time to do it properly because I fall back into the habits. But that book reminded me of the 4 Agreements. Like it was that epic to me. Those 2 books were super epic. But yeah, the 7 spiritual laws of success. If people know of Deepak but haven't read any of his work or have read other work and not that one, you need to grab that book. And one of the things that's amazing about that book is I think Deepak has like 90 books out now, something like that. And some of them, I admit, are really, really, really deep and heavy. So for somebody who's not a big reader, it might be hard. But that book, it's not like that at all.
No.
Like he's teaching you stuff that, that you would think you would never get a handle on if you're just new to reading. And he teaches in such a simplistic, powerful way. Anyway, I'm a big fan of that book. So, which brings up a follow-up question then, Terri. Who inspires you, and/or what authors do you read, and what are there other game-changing books? Or I'd love to dive into where you feed your mind.
Yeah, I'm hooked on Audible, so whenever I'm in the car, I'm listening to Audible if I'm by myself. But Greg Braden is one of my favorite authors. I couldn't pick just one of his books, but he's so he's a scientist, he's a spiritualist, and he kind of melds the 2 worlds in a plain, easy way to understand. So he has certainly enlightened my mind over the years. Bruce Lipton has a great book. What's it called? The Biology of Belief.
Okay.
Really great book. It's probably about 20 years old now, but he just did a new version of it. Very powerful. That just like blew my mind. And the book, The Power by Rhonda Byrne.
I honestly haven't read that. I've been wondering what that's like because she's one of the few people that I read The Secret and watched the movie multiple times, but I've never dived into any of the other books that followed up. So
I like The Power better than The Secret. To me, It's just uplifting, and especially if you do the Audible with her voice, with her accent, it's really nice.
I bet.
But The Power is one of those books that I can open up to any page and just read a couple paragraphs. So I always have that on my table.
Yeah, I like I said, I've been wondering what her other, because she has a couple other ones, right, like that are in the same series. I forget what.
The Power, The Hero. I've read them all, and The Magic. The Magic is a great. It's a 28-day gratitude exercise. So you read 1 chapter a day, and then you do the exercise, and
really
creates magic in your life.
you've kind of got me sold on checking them out because, like I said, I read The Secret, I followed it heavily. Now, when I say that, I think it's because as I mentioned, I had read Think and Grow Rich and these other books that tuned me into this stuff, and I hadn't seen a book that kind of simplified it that much. At the DVD, I personally, and I've said this openly many times, I had a few challenges with the fact that it had like a genie rubbing a lamp saying, "Here's your wish." And like I found a lot of people took from that you just have to visualize a motorbike outside your door and it'll be there in 5 minutes. And then when it wasn't for them, then they kind of threw the book in the garbage in the video. And so that part, I found the book didn't do that. Oh, obviously you couldn't see a visual image of a genie in the book. And so I found the book I got more from, but I loved the book. I did like it. So now you got me curious. I need to check it. I think I even have The Power at home in my bookshelf, but just haven't opened it.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites. But there's so many good books. I read a lot of books on habits. Right now in the middle of reading Dr. Dispenza's Breaking the Habit of Being You.
Oh, that's
exciting. We are such creatures of habit. And if we can create the good habits and get rid of the bad ones, we'll just, be much better.
Have you read, it's just new, I think. I mean, I have it somewhere here. I haven't started it yet, but it was on my list because so many people have been talking about it. But Atomic Habits?
Yes, I did read that one.
Is it a good book? I honestly haven't opened the book.
It wasn't my favorite, but it was good. It gives you some good ideas that, one of my favorite habit books is, oh boy, there's so many. High Performance Habits by Brendan Burchard.
Yeah.
I love that one.
For sure.
Yeah. Because he gives just little things you can do in 3 seconds, 10 seconds, little things just like to tweak before you walk, before you drive home, before you go in the house, to stop and ask yourself the question, who do I want to be for my wife and child in there? Little things like that. Before you go into a meeting, as you're walking through the door, what's the purpose? What's the intention here?
You know what I love about what you just said there, and then I want to circle the Blue Talks just as we wind down. But when you mentioned that about Brendan, I feel like Brendan and Tony Robbins are in a similar place where they're underrated because so many people think of them as only motivational speakers. And Tony Robbins forever has tried to shake that, and people just still don't even hear him trying to shake it and say, I don't care for him. He's just a raw guy. But I have to tell you what changed my belief or my opinion of him. Two things. One, I bought the Personal Power Program and started reprogramming my mind. And then I discovered NLP and realized that he's a practitioner of NLP. He studied at the feet of Richard Bandler, one of the creators. But we were at an event, a learning annex, and there were 10,000 people in the room, realtors. You'll appreciate this from a sales point of view. What Tony got us to do is he said, what I want you to do, and think how powerful this is if you're a realtor in sales. He said, I want you to turn to the person on the right, and I want you to take this pen, like take a pen out of your pocket or whatever, and even if you don't have one, use an imaginary pen. But think about the best day of your life, the day you had your child, the day you got married, whatever that is for you. And I want you to sell that pen. Whatever you can do in 2 minutes, sell the pen. Then he got us to turn to the person on the other side of us and said, I want you to think of the worst day of your life, the day you lost a loved one, whatever it might be, and I want you to sell that pen. And what he wanted the people that we were selling it to tell us was the difference in our body and our approach. And so you were a little bit louder when you were in the best day of your life. You were more dynamic. You were higher energy. You talked faster. You leaned in. You were more engaging. You looked them in the eyes. It was the exact opposite on the worst day of your life.
Yeah.
And
I'm a huge fan of Tony. I've seen him live 3 times.
Well, if you think about just that little exercise, which again, less than 5 minutes for a salesperson, that's game changing.
Yeah.
That it can change everything about your sales. Because what I did then after that, Terry, is I would go into sales calls, and before I walked through the door, instead of me going, oh, I hope I don't get rejected, and oh, is it going to be another one of those calls? I would think about something that was amazing that was happening in my life or just happened, and then I would go in and say, hey, how's it going today? And it was sincere when they said, how are you doing? And I'd say, fantastic. And what was interesting is I noticed that even the people that couldn't buy off me were trying to refer me to people in the building that could also use the equipment I was selling.
Yeah, it's all about energy.
100%. Yeah. So I just wanted to point out that both him and Brendan are like that. I mean, I've been to see Brendan 3 times live, maybe 4. Same deal. The people that don't get it on the outside are like, oh, he's just this raw guy. But again, you read High Performance Habits, and that's it couldn't be further from the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And he wrote a book called The Manifestation. It's gonna bug me now. What do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
Manifesto or something. Anyway, he wrote this book. I'm trying to see if I have it here, but he wrote this book, and basically he brought it to whoever his publisher was at the time, and whatever they pay him to publish, I can't remember who it was, like HarperCollins or something. And he went to them and he said, "Here's my book," and he wrote this basically very spiritual, Think and Grow Richish type book. And what they wanted was another Millionaire Messenger. Like they were like, nobody's going to read this. And it was very pithy and very much ideas to change your life and think about things differently. Anyway, he brought it to them and they were like, nobody's going to read this, Brendan. Go back to the starting board. And long story short is he gave them back their advance. And he went to Hay House, who agreed to publish it. And of course, it's Brendan Burchard. He has a email list of probably 2 million people. The book ended up becoming a New York Times bestseller in like 4 days. And I don't know how many copies it sold, but millions. So I'm sure that Harper's probably kicked himself. But they said, Brendan, your other book sold, but there's no way this one will. But again, think about the type of person that does that actually says, I'm going to give you back. His advance was probably $2 million. I'm going to give you back this money because it doesn't feel right to publish that.
Mm-hmm.
To think that person's just one of these, I'm going to rah you to whatever. I mean, that tells you everything you need to know about him, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But anyway, and then another side note, we have one of our guests who's been on the Blue Talk stage, Anthony Trucks, who's an American Ninja Warrior, NFL pro. Well, Anthony went to Brendan's event just to check it out. And to make a very long story very short, basically he was there and he was doing stuff, and they heard his story and they said, we want to bring you to Brendan and tell him your story and that. Anyway, Anthony's the type of guy, he ended up doing Brendan's security for him and all this other stuff. He's like, I just want to be around this energy. But the end result is Brendan's heard his story and saw his message and eventually said, dude, you got to be on our stage. And to my knowledge, Anthony's spoken on his stage probably upwards of 10 times now. I mean, that should speak something too, because Brendan's not going to Tony and saying, I'm going to give Tony the spot. He's also still giving the spot to somebody who is willing to give to him without expecting anything in return.
Right.
So I'm not Brendan's number one fan. I'm not Tony's number one fan, but I am a fan. I do believe in
I am too.
So that was just a side tangent. So I wanted to go back, Terri, to the Blue Talks book. So as we start bringing things to a close, I'd like to ask you, can you tell us just a little bit about your contribution to the Blue Talks book and why you wanted to get that message out to the world, compared to obviously getting the message out about 10 minutes to a happier you.
Mm-hmm. So I wrote about my journey and how I learned or trained myself to be happy. And, I lived through horrible emotional, my children and I were separated because of divorce. And they lived 2 hours away from me when they were 7 and 9, which was horrible. It was the worst situation for me. And it was a situation I couldn't change. We had gotten married or divorced years earlier, and it was a decision I made. So, I wasn't a victim. It was just the life circumstance that I had to deal with. And I had to train my brain to focus on things that were happy, because if I just started sitting there and thinking about my kids, I would just go down the drain. So I learned these things, and, people all the time tell me, well, how can you be happy in the middle of a pandemic? How can you be happy? I lost my job. Well, I've lived through all those things, and I can tell you, you can be happy if you make the choice. And that's what my chapter is about. And, we have these 60 to 80,000 thoughts rambling through our head every day. And if we don't pay attention to what we're thinking, who knows what we're creating? We're creating our life with our thoughts and our energy. And if we don't take time to pay attention to that, we're not going to be creating anything close to what we want. And my journey inward with meditation and all, I actually had the experience of seeing my own soul, which really just, I always knew the soul was there, but when I went to see it and the amazing, it's like we're avatars and our soul, and if you tune into your soul and allow your soul to steer you, there are no accidents. And that's my message to the world, to get happy, because when you're happy, like you said, when you're selling the pen, your vibration is different. When I was a sales manager and I used to walk around the suits and the high heels, and I would go home from work and take off my shoes, I would say, oh, my aching feet, and then I'm like, well, that's not very positive. So I trained myself to go home and take the shoes off and say, wow, it feels so good to get the shoes off. You're saying the same thing, but it has a different vibration.
So true. And I'll add one thing to that, and then I want to ask you how we can learn more and connect further. But I'll add one thing to what you just said, because same thing. People say to me all the time, "You just seem like you're always happy." And just like I said the other day, somebody said, I wish I was as lucky as you, or you're so lucky." And I often say, if you only knew how much work goes into being lucky, and I'll say the same thing. Now, I don't consider it work, but just to make it easy for people to understand, I'll say, if you only knew how much work goes into being happy. So same idea. I wasn't always happy. I was a big pessimist. I told people openly I battled hypochondria for years, like 4 years with anxiety. You can't have anxiety and hypochondria and also be super happy at the same time. I mean, because one is visualizing I'm not going to make it till tomorrow, and the other one is visualizing I'm super happy to be here. It's hard to be both of those equally. Mm-hmm. But I'll tell you, I could probably go for a half hour of the things I had to change to make this happen. But one of the big ones was I now make, and I still do it, what I call positive deposits. So I call them posits every day. And so what that could look like is that could be me reading a book by somebody, like a Deepak Chopra book, like we said. It could be me reading a Zig Ziglar quote. It could be this interview we're having here. It could be a conversation I'm having with somebody else. And all day I'm making positive deposits. So then what happens is if you accumulate that over time, then whenever I have that day where it's a horrible day in the eyes of most people, what happens is I built up a Teflon, if you want to call it that. I can make a withdrawal. If I go back to the deposits analogy, I can make a withdrawal and it's still not going to deplete me because my cup is overflowing. So I have all these deposits for over the years. And so I don't know what the timeline is, but I maybe could go a month without one positive deposit and still withdraw and still not be depleted.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's what it is. So when people say, are you born inspired? No, I don't think anybody is, but I'm definitely one of those people. I have to work at it. And I've often told people there's a guy named Rick Hansen, who was known as the guy that is known as the guy who created the Man in Motion Tour, which he basically took a wheelchair across the country and raised money. And so people are like, well, it's easy for Rick Hansen. You can tell he's just an inspired guy. So I said, instead of wondering that, why don't I ask Rick Hansen that? So I asked him, I said, did you just wake up every day inspired? And he got in an accident. He was meant to be, I guess you could say he was headed toward the Olympics. And he got in this car accident when he was 15. I think he fell into the back of a truck with a bunch of people that were partying. And he ended up having a spinal injury. And he's been in a wheelchair ever since. And so people said, oh, he's just a positive guy anyway. And I said, were you always? And he said, no, it was when it first happened, he thought my life is done. I was going to be an Olympian. And he said, so I was drinking and stuff almost every day at 15 years of age. And I said, what flipped the script, if you will? And he said, the biggest thing is, he said, I started being inspired by other people and finding ways every day to get inspired. So he said he would go into an event with a kid that was 6 that had the same spinal injury as him, and the kid's smiling. And he's like, how can I be unhappy when this kid can be that happy at 6? Or he said, Terry Fox, who a lot of people know, Terry Fox raised a lot of money for cancer over the years, like $600 million, walked across 3/4 of Canada on one leg, basically. And him and Terry Fox became buddies. And he said every day, Terry and I would call each other and pump each other up. So here's a guy that people think is automatically inspired, and he still need to make deposits every single day.
Yeah, I think we all do. You're never finished.
No,
life is a process, and the habits and all these little things that I have in my book, I do on a regular basis.
That's another important note there, because not everybody, I hate to say this, I hate to open up the curtain and behind the curtain, but not everybody that writes a book and talks about doing stuff does exactly what's in the book. I know this firsthand from both working with people, interviewing people, spending time with people. There's people that say you should do this every day, and they haven't done it in 8 years, and they just wrote the book. And so I love that you added that as well, Terri, because I think it's even more meaningful when it's somebody who's actually practicing what they're saying works.
Yeah.
So I love that you said that. So thanks. Terri, been an absolute pleasure. I knew it would be. With your permission, I'll call it a to be continued, because I know it's just another conversation of probably many. We've done interviews in the past. I know we'll do more in the future. But my big question out of all of this is, how can people connect with you to learn more? How can they grab the book? All that kind of good stuff.
My website is Terri Lynn's Happy Talk at thinkhappybehappy.com.
Okay.
Okay. My Facebook page is Think Happy, Be Happy, no comma. And I'd love to hear from people.
Awesome. Well, Terri Murphy, this has been an absolute pleasure. I thank you so much. I appreciate you. I honor you. And again, with your permission, I'll call it a to be continued.
Okay. Thanks, Corey. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. We'll let you
right.
run, and then I'll just sign off quickly. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Bye-bye. So, wow, what a great special surprise for me to bring Terri on today. It wasn't a surprise in that I knew it was going to happen, but I just mean it was such a great experience. And so excited that we got to have Terri on as the only guest today, the feature guest. And I love her book. You have to check it out. First of all, her chapter in the Blue Talks book, you have to check that out as well. Again, we just talked about it. You can grab the Blue Talks books at Amazon, either .com or .ca, depending on where you're based. And having said that, as I'm talking right now, I'm going to put just for ease, I'm going to put first the .com in. And I'm also going to put Terri's book in as well. So check out Terri's book. Check out the new Blue Talks books. I'm just going to see if I can post this link here, which just brings you to the Blue Talks books in general rather than one specific one. Hopefully that works. I'm going to put Terri's in there as well. And then other than that, I mean, thank you so much for a magical week. You know, that's also on behalf of Elise. I don't think I mentioned on air, but Elise wasn't able to join us today because she had a few things come up, and she was here, of course, all week making magic happen. So, of course, I always appreciate Elise, and she's such a great co-host. So I wanted to thank everybody so much for joining us today. I did put the 2 Amazon links I mentioned in, so Terri's and the Blue Talks one. I'm going to put mine in as well, and then you heard Terri's website as well, where you can visit her or email. So thank you, everybody, so much for an amazing week. The next one of these, you may be wondering when it's going to take place. It's the Amplify Your Message event. It comes up the week of February 8th. And that one is all about becoming a next level influencer. So we basically spend 2 days on writing, 1 day in the middle on speaking, and then 2 days at the end on podcasting. So it's February 8th to 12th. We have so many guests. I mean, I'm blown away by the guests that are going to be involved in that event as well. One is Mark Sanborn, who wrote The Fred Factor, one of my favorite books on customer experience and how to create a customer experience. It's actually about he had this mailman who came up to his door on the first day of his route and said, I want to introduce myself, and here's a letter, and here's what you can expect from me as your mailman. And this guy ended up becoming, for 10 years, the mail person that just over-delivered all the time, and he wrote the book about it. So it's called The Fred Factor. But Mark Sanborn's coming up. He's going to talk about writing a book like that, a monumental book. We also have the co-author of the book called Fish, another customer experience book. I don't know if those listening, if you've heard of Fish, but the book sold 6 million copies. They also made a documentary that was based on the Pike Fish Farm. I think it's called Pike Fish Place in Seattle, where they create amazing customer experiences working with fish. So we have Harry Paul's coming up as well. We have no less than 20-some people that are going to be on that event as well. So join us on the Amplify Your Message event the week of February 8th. If you watch my page or you watch the Blue Talks groups, you'll see the notes coming up and the flyers indicating who's involved. But thank you again for such a great week. As always, I so appreciate you for joining us. I honor your time. You can watch this as a replay or live. And until next time, I'm Corey Poirier. This has been Blue Talks. Thank you on behalf of Elise and myself and Terri today as well. Check out her book, 10 Minutes to a Happier You. Again, the links are all in here as you're watching the replay. And any questions for me, let me know. And if you want to be a part of the Blue Talks world as well, there's opportunities there. So just reach out to me personally. That's probably the best way to do it. So thanks, everybody. Ciao for now. Have an amazing rest of your week and Friday.